Well, hello there. So I make my own lures, well, for the most part. I started making my own chatterbait. I don't want to call them chatterbaits because then, somebody out there might call me and be like, hey, there's a pattern for that. But, so I make my own stuff because, so this is one of mine that I like to make. I've always been asked, a bunch of my friends ask, well, how do you make them? And I try to explain to them, and of course I get that look like, the deer in the headlights look. So I'm just going to do a quick video on what I do and how I do them. A couple things that you're going to need, of course, is it's going to be an unpainted painted head. You can get them at Barlow's. You're gonna need, of course, some skirts. Same place you can buy them at Barlow's. You're gonna need blades. You're gonna need the clips, the little clips that are right there, and all this stuff you can buy at Barlow's. The powdered paint, and I take an extra step and I make the epoxy. Well, I don't make the epoxy, but I add epoxy to my jig heads or my heads because it gives it a little bit of shine, and it also protects the powder paint from chipping whenever if you're fishing on rocks or any brushes. And one of the things that I also do, I don't know if you can see it, instead of the rubber band, I use little artistic wire is what it's called. All it is just copper wire and different colors of it. I use that instead of a rubber skirt keeper. So some of the tools that I actually use, let me put this away real quick. See, these are the ones I've made so far, but I've made a lot more than this. This is just what I have. That's my personal stash. Things that you need, because of course if you have the powder paint, you're going to need the powder paint, of course, and you're going to need a heat gun to heat the jig head or the head, the lead head. I usually keep a little bit of cold water just to cool it down. Now here's the thing that a lot of people are not familiar with, what's called a fluid bed. I went online one day and I typed in on YouTube fluid bed for jigs. There's a lot of them out there. This guy, I forgot his name. Once I find his name, I'll type his name down there. He did something like this, and what it does, it suspends the powder paint. And when it suspends that powder paint, it gives it an even coat, as opposed to when you try to put it into that little bottle, which let me show you what I'm talking about. You just dip it in here, but it doesn't, it's not even. But today I'm making a couple black ones. I'm not keeping this little container. You want to break it up, right? But anyway, so back to the fluid bed. So the fluid bed, what it's supposed to do, you have this little tank, a little aerator tank from a fish tank, and I ran a hose to the bottom of it. This is called the PVC union. And I just added this to the bottom and to the top, and I sealed it, make the bottom airtight. I drilled the hole, epoxied it, so now I have an airtight lower unit. Of course, unless the air is going to come out this way, but you don't want it to come out this way. And then the same guy that had this made, I kind of saw his idea and I liked it, and I just made it look just a little bit different than his. He did a test on the fluid bed as far as the filter. You need a filter median. So, and this is 20-pound just printing paper. I put it on here. Put this right on top of that. And I just secure it. I have a little vice grips, so I can actually hold on to them, because if I'm trying to hold on to them and they're not actually secure, they'll move and it just creates a mess. And of course, a set of nice little pliers. And I'll show you what I use these for here in a minute. So I pretty much have the stuff that I need. I use a little filter, a little face mask, just so I won't breathe in that powder paint. Just precautions. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn on the heat source and I'm gonna turn on the powder paint. I'll see if I can bring the camera and show you exactly what it looks like once the powder paint is suspended. So just give me a minute. One of the things that I use is just little fine glitter. What that glitter does, I'll add it to the black paint after I've seen that it's actually dried and it's already glossy. And what I'll do after that, I'll bake it. I have my own little oven right here, and I'll bake it for I think 20 minutes for 350 degrees. Once that comes out, I'll epoxy it, and that'll keep the glitter from flaking off whenever you're fishing. So a lot of people be like, oh well, won't it be rough? Well, not if you epoxy it. But we'll get to that here later on once it's time for it to epoxy. So I'll add the paint. The aerator is on, so I got to be careful, because if it's too high, it'll come out. And this is how I test it, just to see how much is in there. What it should be doing, it should be making like little bubbles. I don't want to bring the camera in, there's not enough lighting in here. Well, the cord is all the way over there. But it should have like little bubbles that'll come out, and you can actually move it around a little bit, and it looks like water, hence the name Fluid Bed. But so let's get started. When I use these grips, I don't want it to be too tight, because I don't want to bend this, but you want to make sure that it's in there, it's secure in there, and doesn't fall off. And I'll show you what I use these for here in a second. So the time that you heat it up varies from the size of the jig head, but I've done it so many times that I've got to a point where I can actually just see it, and I can see that it's hot. Of course, the best way to test it is touch it, but of course you don't want to touch it. But you got to get it hot. If it's not going to get on there even, and you got to reheat it, and then you got to go back and forth, and then you're going to have too many layers, and then it'll drip once you start baking them. But I'll show you. You count how many seconds from the time that I actually put it in there to the time that I get it out, and then you gauge it from there. So let's get started. So the thing about these right here is if you leave the paint, on the hook, when you put that blade on there, it's gonna catch. So what I like to do is I'll take a set of pliers, and I gotta be very careful when I'm at the base, because if I get too close, I'm gonna peel the paint off of the actual head. So I'll just do like a little rotation, just kind of like, all you gotta do is get this paint off. That's all you gotta do is from that little hook. Okay. Let's see if I can get in there so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, by the way, if you buy one of these, Wagner, a Wagner is 2 settings. If you set it on high, that one's actually low. But if you set it on high and you get too close, that is what happens. It starts to melt. So I recommend low setting. Might take a couple of seconds longer to heat it up, but it will not melt. All right, so I'm gonna put this to bake. So I'm gonna kind of show you a little bit. So I put them in here, and I'll bake them for 20 minutes at 350. You can buy this just about anywhere, really. They're actually pretty cheap. So while we're doing that, let me show you what the fluid bed looks like. If I can get that light all the way up here. That's what it looks like. See, and when you move it around, it looks just like fluid. But we're gonna take a quick pause, because what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna show you how I epoxy, but I'll show you what I use to epoxy. Because if not, we're gonna be here till tomorrow. But so hang tight. Let me get one already made, and I'll show you how I skirt them. All right, so hang tight. All right, so I'm back. So this is what I use. Actually, the brand's not on here. It just says Envirotex, but it's called Pour-On. I bought it at Hobby Lobby. It's a 2-part epoxy. Pretty much it dries the way I put it on there. It makes, 1 for 1, makes it really good. Once I'm done mixing it, what I'll do is I'll grab a brush and I'll put it on. This is one of the ones I've actually completed, and it's ready to be skirted. But let's see if you can see the glitter on there. So that glitter is not going to come off, and of course it gives it that little bit of an extra shine, and it protects the powder paint. So the things that you'll need when you get to skirt. This is one of the guys in my bass club. He loves Junebug, so I'm gonna make him kind of like a Junebug color. So I got the skirt. And I usually use three different strands, and you can buy these at Barlow's, or you can buy them at what's that website called, fishingskirts.com. So you can buy those there. Buy the blade, and then you buy the number 2 clip. Okay. For this, I use these pliers. Of course, my scissors to trim it. And this is supposed to work, but it doesn't work like it's supposed to be. It's to be a wire twister. And the reason I say that is because this is what I was talking about. Artistic wire, 20 gauge. And I use this instead of a rubber keeper. So I'll cut it. Sometimes I'll waste a little bit, but I'd rather waste a little bit than not have enough. So what I'll do now is I'll make a little loop. Just like that. And I'll gather my skirt. I'm using 3 strands. I forget the name of this color, but it has purple, blue, and black in it. And I'm gonna put a little bit. The middle part's gonna be black. I'm just gonna put some black in. I don't want to waste that much. So I'll grab it. All right. Then I'll run it through the little loop I made. I don't want to put it even, because if I make it even, once it comes back on itself, one side's going to be shorter than the other. So for now, I'll just leave it like that, as long as I got it in there. All right. So, and then I'll grab the head. All right, so I'll run it in there now. I want to make the side that's coming back on itself just a little bit longer. So the bottom part where the hook is at, I'll try to keep it about that long, right about there, because I'm going to cut it. So and I know there's tools out there to use. You can use, you know, rubber keepers or whatever, but I don't like that rubber. It frays, and if the sun hits it for a while, it's gonna get all ugly, and it's just gonna get all nasty. So then what I'll do is I'll just move the skirt around, kind of get it evenly around. If I was using another color, like one of the ones that I showed you, then what I would do is layer it on top, the green pumpkin, and then the orange will go kind of like at the belly, and then very carefully I have to make sure that it's even. So this one, all right. So kind of make it a little bit tight, not too tight. Grab my pliers, make one side tight, and then make the other side tight. And I will actually come back around one more time, because I usually like it to be wrapped 3 times. And I'll do it again. Pull on one end while holding the other, of course. Pull it. Pull it. So now you have those two wires pretty much hanging out. I do have a tool, but I'm waiting for that little piece to come in, and what I'm supposed to do is I have a vice grip that I'll usually set right here, and then I'll put this on there, get these two together, and then with my my drill, put that little piece of tool in there, and it rotates it, and it twists the wire to kind of like a braid or something. But manually this is what I use. Now this is what's supposed to do the job of that mechanical thing, but made in China, $8, doesn't work the way it's supposed to. You're supposed to grip it, close it really tight, and it's supposed to be on there, stuck on there, and then you're supposed to pull this, and then it's supposed to rotate. But that's what happens when you buy cheap stuff. So manually, I'll grab both of them, and then I'll just start twisting. All right, I don't want to make it too tight, because this, even though it's wire, it's still it could potentially break. So I'll go to where it gets really nice and snug, right about there. It's nice and snug. So I have that going on now. See how perfectly twisted that wire is? That's what I want. All right. Now, even that is too long now. These don't even cut it. So what I'll use this right here. So this is like my jack of all trades here, because I use it for when I'm painting, and I'll use it when I'm cutting. So I'll cut it down, probably about like halfway down. Then I'll grab it and kind of just so that's done. So now we're going to cut the skirts. Got to make sure the skirts are all even. Almost done. So I cut it, grab the other side, So what I'll do now is I'll make sure that, because it's tight, even though it's tight, you can still kind of move the little strands around a little bit. And I do that because I want to make sure, because you don't want to walk around with your skirt, you know, with your underwear exposed. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Just kind of work it around a little bit, work it. So I'll actually trim some of this skirt down on this side, even though, I mean, they're all even, but I kind of like it to be closer to the hook itself. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to put the blade on. So first thing I want to do is I'll just run the blade in. It already has a pre-drilled hole. Run the blade in, right? So it's holding it. For this one, I always use this one. I don't know, this one actually makes it really, really tight. So there's that huge gap. See it? So we're trying to close that. There should be no gap, because you don't want this blade falling off while you're fishing, because then guess what happens? You're stuck with the blade. Well, not the blade, but the lure will fall off. So you're stuck with the blade, and there goes your jig head and your skirt flying out in the water. So then you grab your clip. Now, what I like to do is I'll grab it, and then pretty much the belly, wherever the belly is facing, that's pretty much where the clip is going to go. So the belly is facing that way, so the clip is going to go on this side. So I always go to the top one first. I'll go through the top one first, and then to the bottom one. So there you have that. Looks just like that. So then you close it. And there you have it. A vibrating something. I don't call them chatterbaits because, yeah. But, so a couple of notes. Because of the epoxy and the epoxy and the weight, that's on here, I like to use a trailer, usually some type of plastic swim bait. And the reason for it, it'll balance it out, because if not, you're gonna too much weight in the head is sometimes what I've noticed, it'll start to kind of rotate on itself. So the best thing for me to do is I'll just throw I wish I had one here, but I'll throw a swim bait or a plastic swim bait on here, so that way it has enough balanced weight. And that's it right there. So keep in mind that this is the way I do them. This is the way I make them. For an epoxy, it's kind of difficult to explain, but I epoxy them just to keep that powder paint from scratching. But like I said, this is how I do them. There's probably, you can come up with your own techniques on doing them, but that's the way I like to do them. You know, I've been doing this for just, I say maybe like less than a year. I do the same thing with the jigs. I paint them, epoxy them, put the weed guards on, and then I skirt them. Same thing. I use this copper wire. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. If not, you know, hey, like I said, this is how I do them. I know you probably can come up with your own technique, but this is what works for me and it's been working for me. And I'm a very stubborn guy, just all fishermen are. We'll stick to what we know. So, but anyways, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section, and I'll see y'all on the water.